So, Davin, you've dragged me out of bed at 7 o'clock in the morning to talk about what exactly?
I was going to ask you about Jar Jar Binks and his father.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about that. So now I'll do the introduction, and I did this assignment, and it was like performing in front of, like trying to do a gymnastics routine in front of a professional or something. So I'm just reading from the most terrible setup. Imagine it's literally just a laptop perched in front of me with my article, and I've got to zoom it in just a little bit. And I was stumbling over my words and everything, and Simon was like, "Oh, it's okay, you're doing fine." So, thank you, Simon. Thank you for lying to me. I feel it's safe to say that the Star Wars prequel trilogy had a mixed reception from fans. However, I think one thing most people can agree on is that Jar Jar Binks can go fuck himself. Something apparently the character's own father agrees with, given that he once tried to kill him for being a clumsy dipshit.
So not just like the character's father, but like the actual actor, what happened to him afterwards was pretty brutal as well.
Yeah, he ended up hating Jar Jar Binks. It's Ahmed Best, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. He's gone on record saying, I like the character, but a lot of fans didn't, and I got sent death threats every day for a year, and it made me hate my life, and my career as an actor was put into question. And I think that's a sentiment echoed by almost everybody. Like Jake Lloyd.
Yeah.
He hates Star Wars now. Hayden Christensen. He's starring in straight-to-DVD rom-coms. He's loving it because it's not Star Wars.
That was the thing, is when you're watching it, when I watched it in the theaters, I don't know, I was in high school at the time or whatever. And so you go in and there was the part at the beginning with the kind of the bad dubbing of the lines of those one aliens. But then when it gets to the Jar Jar part, you're just like, what's going on in this movie? That's when the quality was very clearly not going to be what the originals were.
Yeah, but there's just something about Jar Jar that I've kind of turned around on in the years after the fact, because he's so bad a character and he's just so obnoxiously annoying. I kind of love it now. And I've been recently playing the Star Wars Battlefront game, if you're familiar with that at all.
No, not.
Okay, well, you can play as a lot of Star Wars characters in it, and they have hero characters. You play Darth Vader, Darth Maul, all the big ones. Where's Jar Jar? Why can I not play as Jar Jar Binks and use those dumb Gungan grenades that are the most broken thing in that universe? Because they're like a little ball, and you throw it at a tank, and it completely destroys the tank in one go.
Yeah, or like in the whole hyperspace thing, and it just why wouldn't you just use that against the Death Star or something? Just hyperspace through it and then destroy it,
Oh, man, we have the best edit of that, and I'm hoping we can put another clip of it in of T-Pose Leia, of when I made the joke of why didn't Princess Leia just use the Force to propel herself to light speed directly into the enemy dreadnought? So that clip will be in now. And is it safe to say that moment ruined all of Star Wars for you?
Completely, because it takes the whole, why everything that happened before just makes no sense now. It's why would you even bother? Why would you even bother with huge things like that and Death Stars and Star Destroyers when you could just use little ships to just take one out,
Yeah, it also seems like a tactic that would have been quite useful during the Clone Wars days when you have an army of clone soldiers so disposable.
Exactly.
I think there's even a shot of Obi-Wan Kenobi or Anakin Skywalker jumping off like a clone carrier as it's blown out of the air, and he doesn't give the remotest hint of a shit that 30 soldiers just died. He just jumps off, it's they're gone. It's why don't you send those soldiers to use those tactics? I'm going to raise you in a vat for a decade and to teach you how to fly a ship in a straight line very fast.
Yeah. Exactly, or the droid armies before. It's they're disposable.
They are, but they also have a personality which really freaks me out. But I've pointed out before, there is a scene in one of the prequel trilogy movies where you see a droid begging for its life, and Obi-Wan cuts it down while smiling, and it kind of puts Obi-Wan in a really negative. There'll be a clip of it in now. It's begging for its life. It's unarmed, holding its hands up. And Obi-Wan is just cutting it the fuck down. It's so bad. Because it's very obvious that the droid army was put into those movies so they could cut something up with a lightsaber. And I get that. But why did they give them a personality? Because it makes you feel so bad when they're getting killed. Because they're not robots. They have sentience. They have personalities and they can get promoted in the field.
Yeah, well, yeah. And Obi-Wan, I guess, never really liked droids is the thing later. But yeah.
But at the same time, they are effectively people.
Yeah.
But they have their own personalities. In, I think, the Clone Wars TV show, Right, that you see them just making small talk with each other, and they worry about getting fired or demoted.
Yeah. Well, and then there's like, you got like the C-3PO where, I mean, people, I guess kind of care, although he kind of became an annoying character to a certain extent. But then when you got that scene where he's like supposedly going to die or whatever, they're going to wipe him in the more recent films. And he's like, I'm just looking at my friends. And it's like supposed to be this touching scene, but at the same time, you're like, but these guys, like, really? These guys aren't your friends. Like, where's Han, Leia? Like, these are the people, like these new characters. Who cares?
Yeah, it's so bad. But at the same time, like, now cut them all to pieces with your lightsaber because it looks cool.
So going back to the original topic, what's this about Jar Jar's father?
Well, Jar Jar's father hates him, and today we'll be referring to something that's not exactly canon anymore, but that's pretty much everything in Star Wars now, because Disney deleted everything. But
all the best stuff is what they deleted, basically.
Basically, yeah, and all the best stuff includes the story about Jar Jar's father, who is called, get this, George. George Binks. Called his son Jar Jar, he's called George. You can already see that his dad didn't like him very much when he gave him that name.
Yeah.
Like, I bring it up every time, but there's a game called Star Fox in which you play as a character called Fox, who is a fox. And then his dad, you find out later his dad's called James. And it's just world building 101. If you're going to establish that's a naming convention, they don't give other people normal names. I never understood that.
Well, when you're the main character, I suppose maybe it helps to, you want it to be like generic so the person can feel. Like, I think Doom was another one where they did that, where they don't name the character or whatever.
Yeah, Doom Guy. He's just called Doom Guy.
Yeah.
Or the Doom Slayer, and it's really cool. But just the idea, Fox, James. Oh, Jar Jar. Oh, well, that's a weird alien name. What's his dad called, George?
Yeah, like Steve.
It ruins the universe for me. Like, if his dad was called, it'd be sort of. It's obviously a reference to George Lucas, but I love stuff like that in fiction where it breaks the universe.
Yeah.
Like the part of Lord of the Rings people point out where one of the orcs says meat's back on the menu, which is supposed to be a funny line. So you think, wait, orcs have restaurants?
Well, there's that one where there's some sort of a book that's like a parody of the Lord of the Rings, but it's from the other side, and it paints this picture of this evil other regime who's keeping the orcs all contained, where there's no food or anything, and so they're driven to madness and to like attacking each other and everything, and not because they're inherently evil, but actually because the humans and stuff won't let them out, like, of this place that they're contained in.
Which is a fair reading of that universe. 'Cause, I've said it about The Lion King before, where The Lion King, like Mufasa is a huge prick, because if you think about it, what is it that Scar promises the hyenas to get them on his side? He doesn't promise them power. He doesn't promise them land. He just says you will eat. You'll never go hungry again.
Yeah.
So in effect, that story is the starving masses of the Lion King universe rising up against their apathetic ruler.
Yeah.
And it's not Scar's fault he's a shit ruler, because everything goes to crap when he gets into power, but it doesn't take away from the fact that he got all those hyenas on his side by just saying, you'll eat if you come with me.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's true. It paints a pretty dire picture of their life under Mufasa of someone can come in who's clearly evil and just says, you'll eat. That's better than not eating, I suppose. We better go kill Mufasa. We better go kill Lion Darth Vader and just sort this out. Like, is that the greatest casting thing, though, where like Mufasa is also Darth Vader?
Well, I actually hadn't ever really like consciously thought of that. That's totally true. Yeah.
And then you've got Coming to America, where James Earl Jones in it, and like he's married. Like his wife in that film is the lion wife. But then James Earl Jones is wearing like a big lion pelt over his shoulder as well. It's really true. And I was hoping that he'd do that, then double down again, and he'd wear like a Darth Vader helmet.
Well, did Lion King come before the Coming to America, or which was first?
I can't remember. You know what? Like, editor, put a little fat bar below, and then after you've done that, Photoshop James Earl Jones from Coming to America with a big Darth Vader head on. Perfect, nailed it. It's one of my favourite. It's probably like the biggest weakness of the way we record stuff, because we have so many times we go, oh man, that would have been a great idea after the fact.
I don't know if you watched the We're Hiring video, but that one was just like, I just kind of recorded it normal, but then I just started adding funny stuff, like because I was editing it, like usually I have an editor do it, and this time I just did it and just kept adding like silly little clips of everything all over the place.
Oh, it's what I do all the time. Also, by the way, I'm hoping this goes out while you're still hiring. Yeah, David's hiring. Go work for them. It's the reason I make a YouTube channel today. It's awesome. When I edit on my channel, I always make sure I put star wipes in. Just because I can. So I went to
totally.
I could put a fade, and a fade would look professional and clean, but no, man, star wipes.
No, that's totally. If you go watch the We're Hiring video, it is so crappily like edited because I have almost no video editing skills. But I think it's almost funnier and better because it's so crappy, like
It is.
the cutting and everything. Yeah.
Like, why do you think we leave the corners of our green screen in? That's a deliberate decision, by the way. People don't like that's a deliberate. We do this on purpose. We could zoom in further, or we could like edit these out. For example, whoever edits this one, edit the green screen corners out now. And now put them back in because I don't like them without the thing. So now we've got a distinct visual style, and that's more important than quality to me.
I think that's such a strength of your channel, though, is because it's very clear, like you put a lot of thought and effort into the facts and all that, but then you have that contrasting with this, just like, the like you say, like the green screen that you can see in the corners and like the little crappy little edits here and there and stuff just for fun.
Oh, I love it. It's my favourite part about it, but we need to talk about Jar Jar now.
What's George's deal, and why did he want to kill his son, apparently?
Well, George's deal is that he is a seafaring, like salty-ass, like mariner Gungan badass with a 30-ton Gungan penis that he uses to beat giant alien sea monsters to death with. Like, I cannot overstate how badass Jar Jar Binks' father is in the one comic he has ever appeared in. Because he appears in one comic aptly titled George R. Binks, in which it details his life, which is just an endless series of misfortune, which only started befalling him from the moment Jar Jar was born.
So he's like a badass John Wick character then?
He pretty much is, yeah. Like George R. R. Binks, I think the picture they use of him on the Star Wars Wikipedia, which is called, get this, Wookiepedia, which I'll point out every time, it's awesome. It also helps settle the argument of how the fuck do you spell Wookiee. Are you familiar with that argument at all? Where for years people didn't know how to spell Wookiee and George Lucas wouldn't tell people.
Really? No, I'd never realized that.
No one knew how to spell Wookiee. So how do you spell Wookiee? He's like, Thanks, George. And in this comic, it is revealed that the Binks name is one held in great esteem by the Gungan people, partly because of George's just badassery and the fact that his family has for generations hunted something called the Gungan whale.
So what's a Gungan whale?
It's a horrible monster with giant teeth that George takes it upon himself to hunt, something his family has been doing for generations, and he wants his family to continue doing for more generations to come, to such an extent that he breaks up with a woman that he loves to marry a woman that he doesn't, purely because the woman that he loved couldn't sire him an heir.
Okay.
So he marries a woman he doesn't love purely to get her pregnant, to get an heir, to continue the great Binks line, and the end result is Jar Jar Binks.
Well, you think he's kind of such a disaster. Maybe he could take out the whale just by, being in the general presence.
Oh man, I really like the theory that Jar Jar Binks pretends to be an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
He pretends to be an idiot so people underestimate him, and he uses that to his advantage. But it's not.
I like the drunken warrior or whatever.
Yeah, someone points. There's a theory, isn't there, that he's actually a great master of deception, and they point to the fact that when he fights like a drunken master, uses like drunken master kung fu, and it looks like he's making mistakes, but he's very intentionally taking enemies out. But I don't think George Lucas is a good enough writer to do that, and that's fans reading too much into it to try and explain why this character's in it.
I think what would have saved that character in the end would have been so awesome is instead of just kind of relegating him to the side and, he had like that one scene later or whatever, but like instead to actually make him that fan conspiracy theory where he's actually the Sith master behind everything. That would have been amazing.
That'd been great. I would have fucking unironically loved that shit, but we can't have it, unfortunately. So what we got instead was a story titled George R. Binks, in which his own father tries to kill him, which is equally as amazing, I think, because I'm thinking, why? It's mostly to do with the fact that his son is terminally clumsy and inept at almost everything that he does, which causes his father an unending amount of frustration, which is compounded by the fact Jar Jar shows no affinity or inclination towards seafaring, and thus has no desire to continue in the great Binks tradition of hunting giant sea monsters.
Yeah. So then how did he actually go about trying to kill him then?
Well, it all happens when the entire Binks family is stranded on an island. And do you want to take a guess at how the family becomes stranded on a desert island?
No, how is that even possible in the world? Because aren't they could just go in the water and swim off, right?
Yeah, they can. but they get stranded on a really deserted island. And do you know whose fault it is?
Okay. So they got exiled there, most likely by Jar Jar, because of Jar Jar?
No, it's because of Jar Jar, but what happens is, even though George knows his son doesn't want to be, he doesn't want to hunt sea monsters, which I think is a pretty relatable thing, and probably the only relatable thing about Jar Jar. It's like, I don't want to hunt sea monsters, Dad. That's a pretty terrible job. And he takes him out into the ocean anyway, and gives his son a simple command, mainly, please steer away from that giant monster that's attacking us, which Jar Jar can't understand, and instead steers directly into the sea monster, wrecking their ship, and then they swim to shore, which is a desert island which has nothing on it, and then George just continues to get more and more depressed at the idea that he might die, and the last people he'll speak to is a woman he doesn't love, and his son, Jar Jar. His legacy is just a series of failures that culminated in his entire family being stranded on a rock, which is a pretty ignoble end for a great seafaring badass. And George seems to know this because in the comic, he eventually names the island Binks' Woe, in direct reference to the fact, I'm so depressed here. Because he just spends all his time staring out into the ocean, just going, what have I done with my life? As his son just bumblefucks his way around like an idiot.
So from there, when does he actually try to kill Jar Jar, and then how do they actually get off that island?
Well, he tries to kill Jar Jar because he's so sick of his buffoonery. It's that moment, that famous exchange between Jim Carrey and, oh God, who's the actor now? Tommy Lee Jones. Have you ever heard about this? On the set of Batman?
No.
On the set of Batman, Tommy Lee Jones in full Two-Face makeup was just there, and Jim Carrey was being Jim Carrey. And Tommy Lee Jones walked over to him and he said, I think the direct quote is, I cannot sanction your buffoonery, and walked away. And it's Jim Carrey said it's one of the most brutal put-downs I've ever had, and it's even more brutal because he said it in full Two-Face makeup. Anyway,
yeah.
That happens with George. He's like, I can't stand this idiot of a son that I've sired. And Jar Jar eventually says, well, I'll go get help. Which George, using his years of sailor knowledge, goes, well, there's absolutely no way anybody could swim to get help. That is tantamount to suicide. In his head, but in his words, he says, yeah, sure, Jar Jar, go for it. Go swim for help. That'd be great. And he beckons his son towards the ocean. And Jar Jar is only stopped by his mother, who recognises that swimming for help would be a death sentence and saves him, which only depresses his dad that little bit more. So he can't even succeed in killing. It's so bad when it gets just a little bit worse. Remember, this is Star Wars. This is a series for children. After all this happens,
his son's like, I'll save us, Dad. I can do it. And then his dad's like, yeah, go kill yourself.
Yeah, basically. And it all culminates in George just sitting there going, I'm just going to end it all. And he puts a laser blaster to his frontal lobe and it's like, this is it. I'm just going to end it. And this actual panel appears in an official piece of sanctioned Star Wars media of a Gungan putting a gun to his head and just sternly looking out to the ocean, thinking about the fact his life is a mess.
So does he actually end up killing himself then?
No, because that would be too dark for a Star Wars story. But, George's misfortune doesn't end there because, obviously, his wife doesn't want her husband to blow his brains out. So she goes over to him and tries to reason with him, quite understandably. And the way that she tries to get him not to kill himself is by telling him, imploring him, George, think of your son, which annoys him so much, he actually pulls the trigger. The thought of his son, the last thought in his head before he wants to put a laser through it is his own son. And he even fucks that up because he misses the shot and gets knocked out. And when he's knocked out, he has he goes into a weird dream state where he remembers the woman he left. And he remembers his first love, the only woman he's ever loved, and how he left her because she couldn't give him a child. Mm-hmm. And then she fades away as Jar Jar just comes into frame, and he thinks to himself, I gave up happiness for this moment. Yeah. And the end result is Jar Jar. And man, that's got to sting. So David, we didn't actually introduce who you are at the start of the video. So would you like to do that now for the people at home?
Yeah, I started today. I found out the website and then kind of co-did it with Simon there, and then we actually did like 530 videos before it did anything. Like each one was only getting like 1,000 views or something like that, and then it had that like moment of like all of a sudden just like skyrocketing. And actually, it's like your scripts, your articles were the ones that really took off, like eventually, like that YouTube started loving, and then that just kind of like propelled the channel from there. Yeah.
Straight from the horse's mouth. You
had a pretty similar thing with your channel, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was one video went viral and YouTube's like, yeah, sure. And now I get to sit in this office on my own.
Yeah, well, and did you have it like, because I think one of the advantages, though, of having so many past videos that did nothing, because, I mean, what were you, like a year or something like that, right?
I think it was a year to the day. Like it was almost exactly a year, because our plan was if the channel didn't take off in a year, we were going to go back to doing what we did before.
What was that?
We were going to go back to doing what we did before if the channel didn't take off after a year, because I was paying for everything. And I only had so much money built up. And it's like, oh man, I might have to go back and write those Today I Found Out articles. I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like, for the only reason like I could keep doing that 500 and some is because the website itself was like, earning some money. And so it kind of like funded it, but it was just like this huge loss over the course of like a year and a half. And then like once one video took off, and then there were so many archives that it was just like every couple days a new video would take off from the archives. And then it just kind of kept like cascading for like a few months. It lasted like a few months. It was crazy.
It's a cascading effect. And just to clarify, you own and run Today I Found Out, correct?
Yeah, and then I also do with Simon. Yeah. Well, like initially it was just like being lazy. Honestly, like I was in college and like I kept procrastinating, just looking up interesting stuff. And at the time, like this was like 2009 originally, and there wasn't really like all your YouTube ones, all your interesting fact YouTubes weren't around yet. That was a couple years later. And the websites out there at the time were just so riddled with inaccuracies. And so I just like procrastinating, looking up, random stuff. And I was like, all right, well, let's just make this productive in some way. I'll just like do this as a side hobby. And then it just sort of like took off from there or whatever. And there was like, I think it was like 2 years later is when you came on board, right?
I believe so. Yeah. Did you reach out to me? Because I had like a very Jar Jar Binks-esque like rise to success where all of my successors I bumbled into them ass backwards.
Yeah.
But I remember I just got a random email from you. It's like, hi, I run a website. Do you want to work for me? I went, sure.
Yeah. I think
3 years later I did this.
Yeah, I think it might have been Shell that might have said like, hey, like is this guy's good or something, like maybe I'm mixing it up. Like maybe I don't know. Did you write for Top Tens first or?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, yeah, I think maybe Shell recommended you or something like that, and then yeah. Your first one was on the Dodo, like the
something like that. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I remember.
But I just think it's really amusing. So I watch your videos, and that's why you're here. And I just love that when you're in videos, people are like, oh, who's this guy? Do you ever feel like I run the entire? It's all my idea. Do you ever feel like doing that? It's like getting really angry, like, oh, it's me. Oh, who's this guy presenting the videos? He's not Simon. It's like, it's my site. I do it.
Well, the funniest is though when I do, it doesn't really happen anymore, but like, or as much anymore. But I mean, still a little. But in the beginning, I would come on, and then people would be like, "Oh, this script is horrible. We need Simon and his scripts back." And it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah, 'cause I will admit to getting a little bit salty when I'd see people go, "Oh man, great video today, Simon. How'd you come up with this stuff?" It's like, come on, just watch to the end. I'm like credited right there. And my name is there. It's there. You can see it.
Yeah. No one ever watches the credits.
It's so frustrating. And I remember as well, I got an email from an old site I used to write for. It's like, oh, Karl, I thought you stopped writing. So I did. I do my own stuff now. It's like, well, how come Today I Found Out still putting out videos with your name on? And how many do I have in the archives? I don't know the total, but it's some silly amount.
Yeah, it's like 400 or 500, and I think there's probably like 100 left, maybe. So it'll be like years from now.
Like
It'll be years from now.
I stopped writing 2 years ago. So like, oh man, but yeah, I just wanted to bring you on because I've worked for you for so many years.
Yeah,
and like you helped me out. Like David, if you like this channel, like you're a fan of David because he's the whole reason I even had the the grounding to put together the funds to start the channel.
Well, and
so
it was
I was
just
still
like
writing for you.
Yeah, and it was weird how long it took, because your videos, I mean, you look at like your length of videos YouTube loves, you look at the engagement time and stuff you get, and like it's awesome. Like everything about your channel, it's like the YouTube algorithm gods should have loved it right from the start. And it's just like, what? It's weird that it
and the drinking.
took so long. Oh yeah, I guess maybe. But it's just
and
so weird.
To do that.
Yeah. It just seemed like it should have taken off like basically immediately, and then it was weird that it took so long. Because one thing, like I think your greatest strength is you pick topics, like you know exactly what the internet likes. Like you pick and you narrow in the topic, you narrow in right on like the hook that like is what you should focus on, and you just always hit that every time. Which is like, I can say, like working with so many authors, that is really rare to have someone who just like, no, it's that's what I should focus on, and whatnot. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah.
So almost like I did it for 10 years. That's the weirdest part, because I think Brad can confirm, if he edits his video, I'm sure he'll put like a little thing at the bottom, where when we started the channel, I said to him, it's when we take off, not if, because I know the content is good, because I saw the videos I wrote, like the articles I wrote for you that turned videos, they're doing well.
Yeah.
And that's my words. Yeah. So if I take my words and I read them out, we should be fine, because the only difference is it's not like we've still got a British guy presenting them. Yeah. It's just I'm not as eloquent as Simon. So if these don't take off, it's my fault.
Well, I think that's even better. I think it's even better because you put that personality in and that humor, which makes them even better, I think. And that's something we've actually copied from you a little bit, is where we're starting to do that more and more, is to put that personality in, which our engagement time is way better. People watch longer because, some of the topics, they're interesting, but when you're talking like 15 minutes to cover something dry, but you put that personality in, those aside, it kind of breaks up, and that humor and stuff. So we've actually kind of copied you a little bit on that one.
Yeah. And that's okay, but if I see Simon in front of a green screen with the corners not put in, I'm going to be mad. I'll draw the line at that. That's my thing.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever seen anybody else do it.
Well, one thing that people suggested on this last one, because Simon lost his voice the other day, and people were like, you should have just had like Simon lip syncing what I say, like I record, and that would be kind of hilarious to have like you record one of your scripts and then have just Simon say, but Simon not actually talking, you're voicing it, but he's just lip syncing to what you're saying. That could be pretty funny.
I could just Photoshop him in. We've got a green screen, so I have good editors, and I feel really bad for him because they went to university for this stuff, and their job now is editing static footage of a green screen I tell them to deliberately make look bad.
Yeah. Well, it's the same with like thumbnails and stuff. When you get too good, if it's too highly polished, it's almost worse. Like you kind of want it to be kind of like look kind of bad a little bit.
Because if it's too polished, people start thinking it's Watch Mojo. They start thinking it's like a professional operation, and thereby it's got no soul or personality. You don't want that.
Yeah, just like a corporate shell or something.
I am. Big wangers. I love it.
It's
written on my door. It's the funniest thing. Like Big Wangers Incorporated is written on the door, and I recall the day that I got like the vinyl put on my door. Like a woman in an office nearby walked past and went, "Are you hiring?" And I just looked up and down and went, "No." It's like Big Wangers has a very exclusive hiring policy, and just put the blinds down and went back and played Xbox in my office. Oh,